Joining me to discuss that specific bit and all things 2016 election cycle, CBSN political contributor, Democratic strategist Liz Smith, as well as CBSN political contributor, Republican strategist Hogan Gidley. See what we did there? Hogan, the GOP nominee, obviously joking there, urging himself to stay on point. I wonder, even privately, perhaps how some of his senior staffers may have been laughing, thinking, oh, what might have been. But we have seen him in days recent here, certainly since news of FBI Director James Comey's letter to Congress broke. A candidate who has largely remained on message. What do you think the galvanizing effect is?
It's definitely helpful for him because when he chases rabbits, that's when he gets in a lot of trouble. Let's not forget, there were 7 weeks of dormancy from the Trump campaign when he actually secured the nomination and didn't do anything for 7 weeks, giving Hillary a chance to secure her nomination, then coming to the fore and coming big with a big ad buy in several states. She was able to raise funds. She was able to start to actually speak to voters. Trump didn't do that. He wasted some time. Remember, there are several, I guess a couple finite commodities in politics. One is time and one is money. Trump's been behind in both from the get-go because he takes time to waste it on issues that don't really move voters. In these last several days, though, thankfully, we've been waiting for him to pivot. We've been waiting for him to stay on message, and he's been hammering this message. And the last closing argument for him can be about Hillary Clinton. That's a big advantage to him because for the weeks previous, it was all about Donald Trump's behavior. Now it's about Hillary Clinton's, and that gives him a chance, albeit small, to secure some of these states and win this election.
And remaining disciplined to a degree is important for a candidate on the stump, and we see him in his element there at a lectern. But also, Liz, I wonder if the idea of discipline doesn't also extend to the campaign proper, and to that degree, we're now seeing perhaps the impact of the ground game and the differences between these two campaigns in Florida, in North Carolina. And yet, from 9 points to 3 in this new national poll, battleground states are telling similar stories. It is a race that appears to be tightening. What do you make of it?
It's a race that's tightening, but Hillary Clinton is still up. And I think if you look at the polls, the national polls at the same time in 2012, they were tied, and President Obama won that election pretty handily. And I just want to go back to the point about discipline. You know, there's an interesting New York Magazine profile recently of the Trump team, and his senior advisors basically talking about him like you would a child, and saying that he was completely unable to articulate a coherent message and stay on message. So, you know, it's funny that he's literally talking himself like, don't screw this up. Stay on message, stay on message. And if he manages to do that for the next few days, and I mean, that would be a miracle, and that would be a big boon for his campaign, but it's not enough to get him over the finish line.
And do these numbers suggest a candidate in need of a miracle here, Hogan, or a candidate in need of momentum that we've seen in the last few days?
I wouldn't say a miracle. Momentum may be what he needs here. I mean, look, to be this bad, it's staying on message, but to be this close is less a commentary on Donald Trump and more a commentary on Hillary Clinton. And we've had basically a three-pronged approach to attack Hillary in the last few days, and it's been very helpful for Donald Trump. First of all, we find Obamacare is going to go up 25% on average nationally. We also find out about Clinton Inc., which, of course, as Liz and I have discussed, it's a very muddled story. It's difficult for voters to understand, but it's more for that pay-to-play issue. And then all of a sudden, we're seeing him start to go up in these polls, and then you see the FBI investigation reopened. And that right there was kind of the icing on the cake for him to be able to articulate that last 2 week and a half push to try and really pigeonhole Hillary Clinton as someone who's bad for the country. He's been able to do it for the last several days, even in the midst of Hillary bringing back Machado up on stage. I thought for sure he'd take that bait, and for once, he didn't.
Yeah, I think someone took a hammer to his Android to stop that from happening. But like, and this is the thing, and we know this. If Donald Trump were to win this election, it would defy everything we know that works in recent years. He doesn't have a ground game. He has no ability to get out of voters. And we've seen that in the discrepancy in terms of the early vote. And his base and a lot of the people who turned out for him in the primary, and a lot of the people he is counting on, are low propensity voters. And those are people you literally need to drag to the polls. And so if you don't have a ground game, it makes it tough to have those people turn out. And that puts them at a distinct disadvantage.
I agree 100%. The only thing I would say, we all thought that too in the primaries. Now, again, this isn't the primary, this is the general, and you said they're low propensity. Absolutely correct. But we sat here and there were crowds coming out, and we always pondered, do these crowds actually mean votes? And I'll be danged if they didn't in almost every single primary. The guy won with no ground game in these states, and that's why when the RNC comes in for the general, you already have a ground game in so many states because you prepared. He didn't have that ground game. Hillary's had it for the better part of 8 years.
Right, but the ground game, even with the RNC help, with their help, it's like a quarter or a fifth of what the Democrats have in these states. So.
Absolutely, because Trump didn't build one through the primary process. Usually they can kind of meld together and be kind of forceful.
But he also didn't build one because he fancied himself an outsider. He fancied himself a non-politician, and
he has no understanding of how politics works.
That, if that is in fact true, again, he decided there was a different way. Wrapped himself to a degree, and you talk about low propensity voters.
Yeah.
We're talking about a silent majority essentially, and he's wrapping himself in hopefully the warm embrace of a Brexit vote times part 2 here in the U.S. But Hogan, he's also, for all of his shoot from the hip, perhaps knee-jerk feelings, he has been in historically blue states in these last 2 weeks. He was delivering that speech last night in a dead red district in Florida. He was mocking his own advisors who were saying, they didn't want me here because they know that I already have your vote. But I said, that's why I want to be there, which, I mean, again, it plays to the House. But what is he doing in some of those places 6-7 days out?
That's a great question because, as Liz just pointed out, it flies in the face of everything we've done politically from a strategic standpoint forever in politics. But again, this guy's taken the mold and smashed it throughout primary politics, what worked. So the question becomes, how has he been able to take what he learned in the primary process to do things off the cuff, to do things in an unconventional way, and meld it in with conventional political warfare tactics? It may be too little too late, but it appears with the problems Hillary is having, I'm not sure if he's going to need all the turnout apparatuses that Hillary has. He definitely needs them, and I would have loved to have had these numbers 2 weeks ago, but instead of a few days before the election. But this is where we are, and I don't know if he can break that mold and be successful or not.
Okay, then for what need be done for Donald Trump now, as it pertains to his campaign, if he needs Florida, and let's cede it to him for the sake of this discussion. If he needs Ohio, and let's cede that to him for the sake of the discussion, he's also either going to need Pennsylvania, or he's going to have to make up what he does not get in Pennsylvania. If the numbers remain as they are, Pennsylvania is going to be out of his reach.
Yeah.
Where does he go?
And North Carolina.
Right. So
he's saying he's ahead, and Jason sat up here and intimated he was ahead in North Carolina. I don't know that to be the case. And my people on the ground in North Carolina, my mother lives there, and I was born there. They're not telling me that. It's a really contentious state right now. All the races for U.S. Senate are within a point or two of each other. McCrory, the governor's losing, but he's gaining ground here toward the end with some economic numbers and economic growth. The issue in North Carolina is it's the suburban women that make up and win those votes, and it's in Raleigh, which is Wake County, and Mecklenburg County, which is Charlotte. And of the women who make up those votes, let's not forget, 2.5 million people have already voted in North Carolina. There are but about 4.5 who vote. So half of the people, 45% or so, have already voted in this state. So I don't know if whether they have buyer's remorse or not, they might have already bought the product they didn't want, and it may be too late.
And Liz, you made the point.
Oh my
it's
God,
that group with whom she is making late gains.
Yeah, and I can't believe, I agree with 100% of what you just said. And you know what, my dad's from North Carolina too, so we got a lot more in common than I thought.
And we're going to leave it right there, because that's what bipartisan agreement looks like. Will wonders never cease. Liz Smith, Hogan, Gidley, we appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks.